This is Heavenscape, Year 1, the Strathmore Chronicles, brought to you by Saturday Night Gaming. The Strathmore Chronicles, written by Tony Stevens and Jessica Stevens, narrated by Tony Stevens and Laura Hibbard. Gloom, Episode 10, Dark Devotion. The blinding white flames exploded with power. The group of unlikely companions felt their bodies pulled in countless directions all at once. When the light faded, they stood in total darkness. The air smelled stale and damp, and they could hear a faint, distant dripping. Arthur drew his blade and summoned its fire. The group stood blinking in the light as their eyes adjusted. The floor was dirt and sloped sharply down into the darkness. Arthur motioned for them to follow, and together they ventured down the narrow path. The Iritus fire had been bright at first, but it grew more dim as they journeyed further into the cave. Finally the walls began to widen, and the floor leveled gently as the group entered an expansive cavern. Their movements, which had been muffled in the narrow passage, echoed loudly. A tall crystalline stone embedded into the ground in the center of the cavern illuminated the space. A lone, shadowed figure sat on the granite floor between the group and their objective. Arthur proceeded slowly, gripping the Iritus blade. It seemed to vibrate as he neared the stone.
"I'm guessing you're the immortal man that Morvita told us about. Am I right?"
Arthur questioned the mysterious figure. At the mention of her name, the light from the stone flickered erratically. "Keep calling me whatever you like. I'm here to stop you," the figure responded with a familiar voice, and the group realized all at once that the man who sat before them was none other than Mud. His features were sharper, and his demeanor was much more aggressive, but it was undoubtedly Mud. Arthur noticed that the man's flesh seemed rough and cracked like weathered concrete. Several of the areas where Mud had been injured were now forming rock-like growths.
"Alden's beard, boy! What do you think you're doing?"
Mud leapt to his feet in a blur.
"I'm saving you!"
Mud screamed as he rushed headlong at Arthur. Strathmore realized he didn't have time to react, and he braced himself for a hit. However, just before impact, Mud was diverted by the monstrous Mr. Gray. The dark beast of a man wrestled with the angry young attacker. Robert's appearance had changed drastically since he obtained the green crystal. His form, now much more feral, large spider-like appendages growing from his back, and his facial features resembled that of a large wolf. He snarled at Mud, and he held him pinned against the ground.
"No need to struggle. It won't help you in the end. But do feel free to scream."
"Get off me, you disgusting beast!" Mud managed to shift his weight and threw the monster that was Robert Gray. Snapping and snarling, Gray landed on his feet and rushed at his enemy again. In an instant, Mud was on the ground. Gray was merciless, slashing at the man with razor-sharp claws. Arthur understood war, but this was just butchery. He released a blast of flame to separate the two men. He stepped between them forcefully and held up his hands. Arthur tried to reason with them.
"That's enough. I'm down for a fracas as much as the next guy, but this is ridiculous. We know each other. We have saved each other, and we need to continue to work together."
Mud picked himself back up, battered and broken. His body began to shift and mend itself. The cracks across his skin grew deeper. His flesh became brittle and fell to the ground, crumbling like stone. Beneath the human exterior, his true face was revealed. His flesh was dark and grizzled like the granite floor of the cave. Rocky armor began to form across his body. His size continued to increase until he rivaled Mr. Gray's beastly stature.
Just die!
His speed and intensity was beyond compare as he rushed toward Arthur again. The old warrior barely knew what happened as he felt an oversized fist crashing into his chest. Strathmore was launched across the cavern and slammed into the cold, damp wall. He hit the ground on his back. He tried to take a breath and heard a strange gurgling sound. His body felt numb. He tried to take another breath and choked. Warm blood rushed down his chin, and he realized the gurgling sound was coming from him. He managed to tilt his head down and observed, as if from far away, that his chest was caved in. Oddly, he didn't feel any pain as he watched blood darken his shirt. His body, starved for oxygen, tried to take another breath. His head was spinning. Across the cave, he could see Mud attacking his friends, one by one. The Iritus blade, his sword, which had forged itself in his hand from pure energy, lay at his side. He reached out to touch it one last time. The tip of his finger grazed the sword's pommel as his final breath escaped him. Arthur Strathmore could hear fire, a roaring, raging fire, and he could feel its heat. Slowly he opened his eye. Everything hurt, but it was not a fatal pain. It was a good pain, a healing pain. Arthur found he could move again, and slowly reached to inspect his chest, shocked to find it was healed. He looked around to complete chaos. Flames swirled through the cavern, burning everything they touched. They seemed to be raging forth from some sort of portal, like a scorched tear in the very fabric of reality. He realized that Emory was crouched over his body, the power of the golden amulet still glowing bright. Arthur smiled warmly.
Wolf Mama, am I glad to see you? I thought I was a goner for sure.
Arthur.
Relief flooded her features as she cradled the man she had grown to care for.
You were dead. You died. And when you did, your sword? That portal of hellfire? Your sword did that. I was barely able to bring you back with the golden stone. You have to make it stop, Arthur.
Get me to my sword.
Emory helped Strathmore to his feet, and the two of them ran through the inferno, searching for the Iritus blade. With his one good eye, Arthur saw Robert Gray and Mud still raging in battle with each other. Arthur couldn't help them, though, not in direct combat. He had to get to his sword and shut down the hell gate that it had opened. He saw the blade stabbed into the ground, but it was surrounded by massive flame elementals. Strathmore wondered if they would answer to him as the master of the blade. As he was considering this intriguing possibility, however, a blast of freezing energy shot past him. Rin, the dangerous red-haired beauty, had used the power of the blue crystal to dissipate the flame elementals blocking his path. Arthur was closing in on the sword, but Mud had spotted them.
Why won't you stay dead?
In a rage of force, Mud threw back his aggressors and ran to attack Arthur again. Rin sprinted to intercept her former ally. She hoped deep down that she could talk some sense into Mud, that he would calm down for her. Just as the three of them converged, Arthur reached the Iritus blade. Mud attempted to strike him, swinging wildly, and slammed his fist into Rin. The young woman was flung back, directly into the large crystal standing in the center of the room. The sheer force of her impact caused the crystal to splinter. She fell to the floor, and Strathmore couldn't tell if she was breathing. Mud realized what he had done and rushed to her side.
No! Don't you understand? I'm trying to save you! I'm the hero!
Strathmore felt the blade blazing in his hand. Often, it had behaved as if it was alive, and now Arthur knew without a doubt that it was. The dimensional portal raged uncontrollably.
Wait, Arthur. Don't close it yet.
The beastly man seized this opportunity to sink his teeth into Mud. With all of his might, he pulled the behemoth toward the opening of fire and torment. Mr. Gray tensed all of his muscles and threw mud into the gateway, taking one final bite out of his foe. Strathmore reacted instantly. He focused his soul into the sword itself, and allowed its spirit into him as well. Just as mud flew through the opening of hellfire and brimstone, Arthur closed the gate. The chaos of the cavern settled. Emory's cries broke the silence as she sobbed over Wren's lifeless body. Tilk howled in union as they mourned their brave friend. Just then the crack in the crystal grew larger. The tomb of quartz and glass shattered and exploded outward. A slender woman of intense beauty stepped through the shards. She held out her left hand. Each of the powerful gemstones were pulled toward her. The black ring slipped from Arthur's finger like the caress of a lover. The chain holding the golden stone snapped from Emory's neck, and the fabric of Wren's tunic ripped again as the blue stone was pulled free. The red stone wrenched itself from the clasp on Vel's cloak, and the green stone tore from Robert Gray's flesh. In a blinding flash, the 5 stones merged in her hand. The woman took a deep breath. She looked the same, but to the companions she seemed younger, somehow, and more elegant. Wordlessly, the woman knelt beside Wren and softly stroked her cheek. Wren gasped, her eyes wide as her wounds began to mend. The woman turned and held open her right hand. A bright ball of light began to form in her palm. With the wave of her hand, the light expanded into a glimmering portal. She turned and spoke. Her voice held power, but it was the same calm tone they had heard in the forest. It seemed to echo in their minds.
I thank you, each of you. I will be forever in your debt. You have released me, and in return, I offer you this pathway home. You will return to your lives and finally be free of this place.
Her unearthly beauty and calm tone brought peace to each of them. Around him, he could hear his companions laughing and crying and embracing each other. But he couldn't look away from this goddess. For the first time in a long time, Arthur Strathmore was speechless. Time passed at a crawl as the group of unintentional allies said their goodbyes. They had been through so much together, so much that no one else would ever understand. They had grown stronger together and helped to free an imprisoned goddess. They knew, somehow, that they had changed all of existence with their actions. Vel was the first to step into the portal, and with a few awkward hugs, he was on his way. As he vanished, Wren and Tilk waited patiently for Emory as she said her final goodbye.
Do you think we will ever see each other again?
Arthur had known from the first moment he saw Morvita that he would do whatever she asked, but he felt uneasy about lying to this sweet elf.
If I can find a way, I will find you.
Emory took hold of Wren's hand, and with Tilk at her side, they stepped into the light. Only 3 remained in the cavern now. Arthur stood close to Morvita, ready to defend her should the need arise. Robert Gray stepped forward and bent a knee before the majestic woman.
Allow me to serve you. Anything you need, whatever you desire, I can serve you well.
Morvita reached forward, placing a steady hand on the tormented man. His soul seemed to be calm, his body no longer tense.
When the time comes, you will serve me well. I know this to be true. Now go and find balance for yourself. Be ready for when I call you.
Robert gave one final glance to Arthur. The look in his eyes was almost apologetic. He lowered his head and stepped into the light, gone from the realm at last. Morvita turned to Arthur. Her eyes were cold and calm, yet inspired intense emotions.
You remain at my side. Your concern for me is recognized and valued. But Valos needs you now, Commander. You must bring justice back to your world.
He turned to look at the way home. He knew he had to go, but he didn't know how. He felt down to his core that he belonged with this woman. Still, there was one final task.
The boy.
Arthur couldn't bring himself to say Mark's name.
You said you could bring the boy back.
So I did. Tell me, Arthur, is this all you would ask of me?
Arthur Strathmore knelt before her, offering his sword as compensation.
Take what you must. If it is mine, I offer it to you freely. But please, give the boy one more shot at life. He earned it. You speak of balance. Mark is a truly hopeful and positive soul. All the evil I have seen, all that I have done, he is surely the balance to that.
Morvita took hold of the Iritus blade and examined it closely. She ran her fingers along the blade. Flames flared along the edge as her fingers caressed the metal. She handed the blade back to the old warrior.
For what lies ahead of you, this is far more important in your hands. The boy is whole again and waiting for you. Return to Valos, where you are needed.
He met Morvita's gaze unflinchingly. He felt the intoxicating pull to stay in this place, with this woman.
He is waiting for you, Arthur. I promise you this.
Strathmore tore his gaze from her and took a deep breath. He had to do this. Mark deserved to live.
Justice is the sum of all moral duty.
He stepped into the blinding light and was consumed by it.